All right, so let's talk Service Pack 4 due in a month. Sorry. So the usual disclaimer, everything I'm showing you is not live yet, right? So don't make any kind of decisions based on that, but we're pretty far along the path now, and so I'm hoping that what you'll see is what you're going to get. Three kind of big focuses that we had with this current service, with the next service pack. First was extending the scope of some key features, especially around Crystal, specifically putting more back into Crystal Classic as we begin to go through the point of retiring Crystal for Enterprise. And then certainly some new additions to the Webby data mode, which we introduced in Service Pack 3. And then number two was listening to you folks. So kind of making sure that we could deliver the most wanted and most asked for customer enhancement requests. So a lot of what's in there is from you, and thank you for that. Keep up with that. And then the third piece is just kind of a continuing mantra to make sure that we continue to improve the user experience overall. So that's anything from, better chart, graphics improvements, different things, new functions, things like that. So these are the three themes and pillars that we had with release. So let's talk Crystal for a moment. So biggest thing, I think, Crystal for Enterprise was our attempt for a while to have the Crystal code line be more akin to Webby with, using universes as a data source. But it was very hard for us to kind of pry from their dead hands the Crystal Classic mantra. And so with that, at the end of 4.3, when we move to BI 2025, we will be retiring Crystal for Enterprise. But the good news for those of you who have done that, who have used that part of the tool set, is of Service Pack 4, we will now be able to have Crystal Classic use UNXs as a data source. So all the capabilities of Crystal Classic with universe access, which is huge, right? And for the future, then we will be able to move the C4, the Crystal for E content to the Crystal Classic, right? Also with this, we're introducing kind of the Fiorified viewer capability for Crystal content, so it's not just Webby anymore. So we have, the Fiori viewer, which includes open document support, CMC support, and even the ability for you to put your favorite functions in the toolbar. And then we also have export to password protected PDFs as a capability within Crystal. That was a customer request, as well as support for variance parameters. And so that's kind of mostly it for Crystal. Now, for those of you who are using the .NET and other things there, right? So one key thing is that we've extended the end of maintenance date for Crystal for Visual Studio to the end of 2027, right? So these, when you get these slides, this link will be live, and as usual, that end of maintenance date will be reviewed regularly. So as of right now, at this point in time, it's extended to 2027, but who knows? Maybe there's some optimism there beyond that. However, if you're using 32-bit .NET runtime, that will definitely be discontinued after December of 2025. So we urge you to move to 64-bit as soon as possible. And that's especially, key if you're moving on with us past 4.3 into the BI 2025, because that will be 64-bit only. Now let's talk Webby. So one of the coolest things I think that we've introduced in Webby in a long time was this data mode. So for those of you who've played with it in Service Pack 3, I think you'll see the value there, especially for those who like to consider Webby as their ETL tool, but also just the ability to really look at it from a purely data-centric perspective, so that when you start to build your report and design your content, you actually have a better sense of what's going on with the data, instead of maybe having to flip over to Excel and kind of dork around with the data to kind of see what it is you think you want to render in the tables and charts that you put on your report. And so data mode's a huge thing, right? So report designers can prepare that self-service mode, kind of their data for the sharing. And key thing there is that especially as we move away from multi-source universes, the ability to have a capability at the user interface mode to combine multiple data sets in truly robust ways, not the old way of kind of trying to join microcubes, really doing it more from a genuine kind of almost data modeling perspective is a huge, huge gain for us. And so what you'll see in Service Pack 4 is the ability to have some new combination of operators so that it really is more like full data mode. So we'll have a full join, inner join, left join without intersection, and fill join without intersection as well. All things kind of missing from the Service Pack 3 release, but great to have it now, a fully more robust data modeling capability there in data mode. Another key thing is that if you use the microcube as a parent of a combined set of cubes in the data mode in Service Pack 3, you could not reuse that cube in another combination. So now, as of Service Pack 4, you'll be able to reuse different microcubes in multiple combinations, right? So it's a huge limitation that we've removed there. And as you can see, for those who haven't seen the data mode, it's very graphical as well as kind of, giving you the nice grid of data that you're looking at. But you've got the ability to see from a flow perspective in a nice way how you're combining all of these various different microcubes and what you're doing with them. And so you can also combine multiple cubes at once. So that's a huge, huge gain for us there, being able to identify the relevant keys as you're doing that and specifying the specific operator to use in each of those different multiple combinations. So some great advancements there for us. Also at design time, the designer will be able to do things like show and hide cubes so let's say Gregory had designed something for me, but he doesn't trust me to be able to play with some of this. He just wants me to use what he's done. So you can hide cubes, and then all of the resulting objects in the cube identifiers will not appear in the list of available objects for you. You can also hide specific objects within the cubes themselves. And so again, ways for you to kind of, if you don't necessarily trust your consumer population, ways for you to control what you've done in data mode while still having the power of it from a designer perspective. Also, just some nice little kind of usability enhancements that we've done to kind of make sure that it all feels and looks the same. So in the Objects tab, we will now have icons that are indicated next to different cubes, and that will be an indicator to you that there are transformations that those cubes are involved in and hidden actions that you might want to incur as well. Also, there's a More Actions button. So it's the three-dot ellipsis, which is common now across SAP Analytics Cloud and throughout the rest of Web Intelligence. We've brought that More Actions option into the contextual menu for the data mode as well. We also have refresh time. That was something that was requested. So the refresh time of each individual query or cube is now shown in the visual graphic indicator there. So it's just kind of nice, again, nice little things that have been requested here and there. So visual indicators, more contextual menu, more right mouse click capabilities, and more information for you. Webby is a data source. So another huge thing in the kind of hybrid mentality mode, but also just for Webby itself, is the ability to reuse a Webby document as a data source for a new Webby document, or again in hybrid mode for even as a data source to SAP Analytics Cloud. And so one of the things we've done with Service Pack 4 is we have the ability to refresh that Webby data source. So it was harder to do that in the beginning, but now you'll be able to, if you're using Webby as a data source, that source Webby document, you can have different ways to refresh that, even to respond to prompts for that source Webby document. And it's just a much easier and more of a genuine workflow at that point. And that will include then, even when we go into OData support, the ability to have the refresh as a flag or option for you when you are generating that OData So it's kind of a nice dovetail there from the Webby as a data source to the OData topic. But again, we have improved and have better OData support. And in fact, I believe that Gregory is going to be showing that to you live after I stop yammering at you. So key thing here for us is that Webby report blocks can be shared as OData URLs. And so that's key to replacing anyone who used to use document as a web service or query as a web service as well. So we've got that capability there. It's just known differently, and it's now done through OData. So again, we've got that refresh option now, and we also have a prompt option for that OData URL. So it uses kind of the same text as you would find in an open document call, but all of those are options that you can have now in that OData URL as well. So it's much more robust for you. Reporting interactions. So we've had some additional interactivity that we're adding. So the ability to dynamically hide columns in a table when certain formula are true, and also when a column's empty, you can do that as well. And we've also got some better intra-document linking that's more kind of wizard-based and more easy to do. So again, better navigation amongst your different Webby documents or internal into the Webby document itself amongst your blocks. We're also supporting more input controls with intra-document linking. So that includes the spinner slider and a double slider now as well. A variety of chart enhancements. So, if you remember option 3 in terms of the focus, just general usability enhancements. So a lot of cumulative enhancements for all of the graphics that we have available. And so that includes things like graph windowing and floating toolbars available when you select a block in a reading or mobile mode. Also from a geodimensional standpoint, which was included in Service Pack 3 Patch 1, we have now more cities. So you maybe remember the initial geo kind of limitation was that it would only include out of the box cities that had more than 100,000 inhabitants. We've now removed that limitation and started to add more cities to the baseline geo maps that we've had out there. A lot of that coming from requests from the customer base. So if there are large metropolitan areas that were just under 100K, we've probably added a lot of that at your own request. And we also added the ability to maximize within the window custom elements as well. So just again, little minor annoyance kind of nitnoid things that you've requested through the years here that we've done from a usability standpoint, making the graphics more compelling. We've added some send to actions, right? So number 1, send to is back, which is huge. You may have seen it in Service Pack 3 Patch 1 as well, but we have a nice dialog box now that allows you to do send to and share that document with BI inbox, email, FTP and SFTP servers, file systems, etc. So that's something that was clamored for that we've brought back into the tool set. Some functions in the formula language that we've added as well. So we now have some new time-aware functions, some other properties that we have in terms of getting custom properties, getting data source description properties, location type, data source name, etc., as well as being able to change the separator for the formula user response. So new formula language enhancements there. More on the continuous UI improvements. So if you've ever had to do some searching, it used to be more of a blunt force kind of, show me all of the highlighted items. But now, if you wanted to find a specific string in a specific set of variable formulae, you can actually do that now. And as you can see from the screen grab, it highlights everything in yellow appropriately. So you don't have to keep doing the Control F, Control N kind of motion where you can keep finding the next one. It highlights all of these in your variable formulas there. And also, as you can see in the right-hand side, you've got that search available to you from that more ellipsis, more option ellipsis, as well as the right mouse clicking capability to search in the variables. Other things we've done. So now in the properties tab of the build panel, we've got the document ID and the QID both on display. In the navigation tab, we've added the ability to do just the displaying of the sections of the report as a tree list, so more of a kind of roll up, roll down. In the filter bar, we now have nice informational tooltips. So for those who are always concerned about their end users' ability to understand what they had to filter and why, you've got now the ability to add a little more context to that filter and kind of give more informational background as to why or what they should be entering into those filters and those prompts. Numeric date time display. So we now have some new formats, including compact currency, compact time zone, and the ability to change time zones. The display format dialog box has been enhanced, so you can better manage custom formats as well. And all of these things can now be centrally defined at the object level as a property. So it kind of increases your productivity since you don't have to jump around to do it multiple times. Prompt grouping. I like this a lot. I thought this was huge too. So similar to the informational tooltips, where you can add more information and context for the end users to understand what they're filtering, you can also now group your prompts into logical kind of functional sets so that you've got specific options that the users understand and are grouped together for them to understand, as well as having the required or optional or even exclusive capabilities that you can add in there too. Direct access to DataSphere. So Bruno mentioned data services, and by the way, I'll just have a little aside here. I don't have any slides on that, but in fact, I was on a data warehousing call right before this webinar started. Be assured that as long as the business objects line lives on premise, there are data services options as well. It may not be perfectly timed in terms of release, but there will be a data services 4.3 service pack 4 that will debut sometime in the coming months as well. But for those who are kind of moving into our cloud motion with DataSphere, one of the huge things as we try and move down that pathway is we want to be able to have business objects better use DataSphere as a data source. You can do that right now with universe access to DataSphere, but as of Service Pack 4, much like HANA, you'll be able to do a direct connect to DataSphere models without a universe intermediary. So it's huge, again, for those who are kind of bought in on the SAP HANA, SAP DataSphere storyline. Webby can be a nice front end to you now without having to replicate or generate access via the universe. So I think that's a huge step forward for us in our overall plan. Let's talk semantic layer for a moment. So as kind of an anticipation of the fact that with BI 2025, as we have said many times with Wiiisdom and others, at the end of 4.3's mainstream maintenance cycle, we end UNVs. You finally have to have moved to UNXs. So in anticipation of that, a couple of things that we did. Number one, we've tried to make it easier to move from UNVs to UNXs. We know that there are some kind of common blockers out there that in that conversion process that would have prevented that conversion from an easy standpoint. So we've tried to fix as many of those as we could identify. And we also have some massive change workflows with some workflow assistance, et cetera, that will allow you to more easily change the source of those data workflows and those UNVs and UNXs as well. We've also improved UNX performance at the end user level, right? So we improved the loading time of the converted UNXs that you've done, and that also then leads to better loading time in Webby itself. So you'll see that benefit both at the designer side and at the end user Webby side. Also, another key part of that is while we're moving to UNXs, we are also moving away from multi-source universes, as I mentioned earlier. And so to anticipate that in the BI 2025 release, we're also then looking at some changes in Service Pack 4. So multi-source universes on BW are going to require a change source to the BW direct access in Webby. Multi-source universes with only one data source currently are going to be required to be converted into single source universes, and multi-source universes that have multiple data sources must be converted using this new Webby data mode to try and get yourself down to a single source. Launchpad and workspaces. So not much new with the Launchpad itself, but we are working on improving workspaces. I've always been a big fan of the BI workspace. I've seen it used very efficiently and very well throughout the years. And I thought it was huge when we moved to the 4.3 and the UR5 experience, when we were able to convert the workspaces into that. So we've done some improvements on navigation here, better performance while you're navigating, and also improved the freeform capabilities within the workspace, within BI workspace, as well as its stability. And now we're getting to some of the more deep in the nerdy stuff that I'm not as familiar with, but it was really cool when I saw it. So first was, for those of you who use Azure, and those of us in the government workspace, I have found this very compelling. So apparently Azure has the ability to have sensitivity labels uh, put into their platform. And so as of Service Pack 4, the BI users will be able to use those classifications and see them both in the BI Launchpad for any of their content, as well as storing it on the content itself when you even export. So some really cool stuff there if ways for us to kind of deal with the hyperscaler. So a great example where if, let's say we're at a government agency that has Azure and they have some classified sensitive material that we want to put out there, not only can we see that classification when we're viewing the Webby document and interacting with it, but if we wanted to export or schedule or burst something like that, it will also be included in the output of the PDF document that we send. Also some changes in the authentication and password policy. So we now have new ways to enforce the password policy. So they can be overwritten in memory as soon as they have been processed. And we also have different things that you can have from a configuration standpoint. So you can avoid certain combinations of characters if you want, and you can set that as policy. You can have a certain number of days after which a password will be invalidated if it has not been used. And that's apparently an answer to something specific to Italian law. And then you can also configure a number of days after which your starting initial password gets invalidated if it's still in that initial state. Also, some certain certificate-based authentication that we have now between the CMS and the CMS database for Oracle with X509 there. So you can leverage that certificate-based authentication between the two instead of having to use passwords. So it's a nice way for you to provide user credentials and leverage the Oracle wallet instead of kind of more of the user login token password combinations. SQL parameterization. So again, kind of a behind the scenes thing, but very cool for those, right? So it's a matter of when you're using HANA, your HANA SQL cache can get filled too soon with the current way that parameterization is handled within the query generation. And so now we have a way for us to leverage different implementations that will support not just HANA, but all databases as well, where you change from literals to parameters. And so when you do this, there's really essentially no functional change to the end users or what you've been doing so far, but it's going to have big improvements from a performance standpoint, and it's not going to have to be specific to any workflow. So it's nothing that you're going to have to do. Just think of it as a nice enhancement that we've done from an optimization standpoint behind the scenes for you there. Improving the update experience, also key for us, right? Kind of an ongoing goal for us to continue to make sure that we don't do things like break anything that you've done along the lines of customized settings in the app server or other parts of your configuration. So we're trying to make sure that we've improved that and not going to break it when you do those movements and updates. And on Red Hat, we also have a new script that can generate start scripts for business objects. In fact, I was just at ASEG Tech last week talking with some of our Red Hat folks who used to be BobJ, and they were kind of excited to see this as well. Multiple events while scheduling. So the current limitation for scheduling now is that when you're doing scheduling, multiple events are scheduled and they won't trigger until all of those events are checked or occur. So now you've got an option where you can actually have a checkbox that will trigger on any event. You can also have different options in terms of publication and scheduling scenarios in the CMC. as well as in the launch pad. So it's huge. It's nice that if you have, let's say you've got 10 cascading events, but you really want something to trigger on any single one of them, you can do that now. And that will also kind of transform through the SDKs and the REST SDKs as well. And with that, I will say thank you. I am neither Samuel nor Gregory nor Terry, but Gregory is on the phone, and I will be here to help with questions as we go forward. And with that, I will stop sharing.